Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us today at this Transparency Committee meeting. Transparency is vital to ensure that local government works for all residents. Thank you. By making information accessible to all, promoting civic engagement, and holding government accountable. Earlier this year, I was proud to support my colleagues, both Chair Fletcher and Supervisor Anderson's board letter to establish the creation of an advisory board, the Transparency Committee. The purpose of the Transparency Committee is to review, assess, conduct stakeholder outreach, and recommend policy changes to advance transparency and open government in the County of San Diego. I wanted to share with you all that since the creation of the Transparency Committee, Supervisor Anderson and I were appointed to serve in this committee, and we have met with county staff to begin the work. And so I want to thank county staff for all the work that they've done thus far. I am happy to inform you all that county staff has identified some items and recommendations that can help set the foundation to accomplish a more transparent and accountable government. Among some of those items included email retention policies, which would determine the length of time emails should be held, Public Record Act request, and how to improve this process to make it easy for the public. Board and stakeholder engagement, which would include looking at ways to improve the public participation. I really appreciate all the work that county staff has put in thus far to help identify best practices and help us become a more transparent government. Also, earlier this year, I was very proud to introduce a board letter calling for the creation of a budget equity assessment tool. This budget equity assessment tool is a priority that can address by this committee as well. The creation of this tool is going to institutionalize the help advance equity in our county and enhance our ability to serve the needs of impacted communities, especially our low-income communities and communities of color. By having county department answer very intentional questions during the budget development, this tool is a vital mechanism to identify and address inequities, but more importantly, it will allow the board to see where investments need to be made to address inequities and uplift our disadvantaged communities. Today, I'm looking forward to hearing firsthand from community members and stakeholders on any recommendations you may have regarding the budget equity assessment tool and any other areas. All of the information provided today will be gathered and reported back to the Board of Supervisors for further consideration and discussion. And with that, I'm going now to turn it over to Supervisor Anderson for some opening remarks before we go over what the process is going to be like today. Supervisor Anderson.
Thank you, Supervisor Vargas. The purpose of this meeting is to hear from our constituents on how the county can improve both the information it shares with the public in ways it provides that information. I want to thank everybody for participating today in advance. We have a real opportunity to look at how we run the county government to make sure that everybody understands what we're doing. I want to thank my co-chair, Supervisor Vargas, for agreeing to have this as a public hearing. Some of these subcommittees are under no obligation to be heard publicly. They could be done behind closed doors, but we wanted to make sure that you had a chance to participate, especially on the issue of transparency. So I really appreciate everybody coming and sharing their thoughts. With that, I'd like to turn things over to the county clerk of the board, Andrew Potter, to explain the process for this evening's event.
All right, actually, thank you, Supervisor Anderson, for your comments. I just wanted to share the process. Before turning it over to public comments, I did want to make a comment to set some ground rules and explain how the public can share their input during this meeting. This meeting is being held both in person and virtually via Zoom, and it's scheduled from 5 to 6:30 p.m. this evening. During this time frame, we will alternate between hearing from in-person speakers and those individuals that are participating virtually. Each speaker will be given 1 minute to make their remarks, 2 minutes total if translations are required. I did want to note that those participating virtually can also provide their comments via the chat during this meeting. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Andrew Potter, the clerk of the board, to begin calling speakers, and so we can hear from you firsthand about any recommendations that you have for this committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Vargas. What we're going to do this evening is hear from 5 in-person speakers, and then we'll turn it over to our fantastic fruition team to hear from 5 virtual speakers, and we'll just go back and forth. So I'll go ahead and call the first 5 individuals, and you may come forward in any order when you hear your name is called. And if you can line up under the murals until it is your turn to speak, we'll just ask you to please state your name for the audio record and for those participating virtually. So we're going to begin with Martin Sereno, Kurt Warden, Ann Hodges, Steve Thompson, and Steve Stovey. I've called your name, come forward. And as the vice chair indicated, you'll have 1 minute. You can regulate your time with time on the podium.
Hello, my name is Martin Sereno. I'm a professor of neurobiology at SDSU. I was at 20 years at UCSD as a professor there and 10 years in London. I'm very troubled by the concept of a medical misinformation censor. That's not how science works. You set up an experiment or a treatment and you see what happens. And then depending on what happens, you may have to change your mind. For example, Israel is one of the most vaccinated countries in the world. They have vaccine mandates, vaccine passports. They now have the highest per capita COVID infection rate of any country. We can't call this, misinformation just because we didn't like the way it turned out. We have to change our minds. That's the definition of science. Instituting a medical information censorship office is a terrible idea, reminiscent of the darkest days of biological science in the former Soviet Union. It's a tragedy this was approved.
Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name's Kurt Warden. I'm a resident of Lincoln Acres in District 1, an unincorporated community. I want to generally say that I support open transparency in government. I would like to specifically applaud Supervisor Anderson's efforts to make sure that the community was made aware of those, this particular meeting, as well as others. And hopefully we can get the rest of the county and the other districts similar efforts as Supervisor Anderson's office has taken. As far as the budget equity piece, Supervisor Vargas, I'm afraid that the community is generally unaware of it. So some communication in that regard would be appreciated. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Annie Hodges, and I am a resident in the East County area in Supervisor Anderson's district. One of the greatest principles that has built our nation is our voting democracy, the ability of the people to be able to have a voice through a vote, to say this is an individual that I would like to represent me because they're going to listen and then act accordingly. Listen and then act accordingly. Last Tuesday, when hundreds of people showed up here to speak in opposition of the agenda item making health misinformation a crisis, which everything is a crisis at this point, hundreds of people came out to speak in opposition, a handful that were for that agenda item. And what did this board do? They went ahead and voted it through anyway. We have people at the state level stripping transportation bills and sneaking in vaccine passport mandates to make sure that the people don't see what bills are actually coming through. That is not transparent. The American people is not representing them.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
My name is Steve Thompson, and I am Representative Anderson. You are my area, so thank you. And thank you, Representative Vargas, for having us today. I'm the author of Workplace Safety, a guide for small and mid-sized business. I have taught for 25 years at San Diego State in the Occupational Health and Safety Program. I started a company here in San Diego called Aspen Risk Management Group, where we have been responsible for the last year and a half of writing COVID prevention plans and pandemic plans and business continuity plans for businesses throughout San Diego and the state of California. Where do we go with transparency? Well, the first thing that we do when we go into a company, and by the way, my company's been in business for 15 years here, and we have 30 employees that work. And we've been using things like contact tracing and all the other stuff that's necessary to stay safe on the job. We're very transparent with our clients, and many of them are government entities. Many of them are regular companies that you see day to day. Well, transparency, I say, as it relates to the budget, I'm concerned about that greatly as it relates to this,
you.
the fiscal aspect. Thank you very
sir.
much.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Hello, my name's Steve Stovey. I'm a U.S. Navy veteran, and I'm from Supervisor Anderson's District 2. Thank you, Supervisor Vargas, for today's meeting. I'm here today as a concerned parent. I'm not really excited to see the mask mandates in school, and now I'm hearing that they want to do it outside. That's a problem. Just having the mask, I think we need to reconsider the matter and maybe vote again, if that's possible. The 3-2 vote was already happened, but maybe you can reconsider. Is there a way you can reconsider the mandate? I'm asking, is there a way to have another vote? Do you have compassion on us? Do you have compassion? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now we'll hear from 5 virtual participants, and I'll turn it over to our fruition team to hear from the first 5 individuals that raised their hand in Zoom.
Shane Harris, you can talk.
Yes, hello to the Transparency Committee. This is Shane Harris, the president of the People's Association of Justice Advocates and a member of the District 4 County District for the county. My office brought forth a proposal called Boost Democracy, which essentially seeks for 4 of the largest government agencies in the county of San Diego to adopt a text message proposal, where basically if a resident is calling into a meeting, that they get a text message for their agenda item when it actually is up, instead of having to wait long periods of time. The pandemic has made meetings more accessible, that's true, but it has not made meetings more efficient. For working mothers, working families, and hardworking citizens, we should be making every turn possible to make life better on those people to speak at these meetings. As we saw last week, when 400 people packed the board chambers, there were people calling in to speak, but they had to wait on the phone until their agenda item. Please adapt a text message notification system to your public meetings and adopt Boost Democracy. It has been issued to all Board of Supervisors. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Janine Arakat.
Good evening, Senator, excuse me. Good evening, Vice Chair Vargas and Supervisor Anderson. Thank you for the opportunity to provide feedback at today's meeting. My name is Janine Arakat. I'm Policy Associate with PANA, the Partnership for Advancement of New Americans, and have met with both of your offices talking specifically about recommendations on how to improve language access, which to our understanding is currently under the Transparency Subcommittee. We've shared these recommendations with your staff, and I'll follow up with email. Something really want to emphasize that's been successful in cities like Seattle and King County have included creating a language access coordinator position at the county level that can work with county departments to develop a comprehensive A131, A139 implementation plan for countywide offices, and to dedicate adequate resources for translation and interpretation to go alongside the amazing policy that you all had passed last November. Thank you all again. I'll be following up with these recommendations.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Casey Zanner.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. I live in La Mesa, so Supervisor Anderson, thank you for representing me. Thank you, Supervisor Vargas. As a parent in the San Diego Unified School District, an advocate for gun violence prevention through Moms Demand Action, I certainly understand the importance of having a voice when decisions are being made at the local level. I've participated in my fair share of these meetings, and like all parents, I care deeply about the safety and welfare of our children. In fact, I would have been at the meeting to vote in or to speak in support of medical misinformation resolution, but I was unable to because I was caring for my children. And I've seen constituents leave meetings before having an opportunity to speak. So I also want to support the Boost Democracy Initiative. We've seen over the past year how the shift to virtual meetings has increased accessibility already, and this will work to increase this accessibility. Having to wait on hold for an indeterminate amount of time creates unnecessary barriers to civic participation. It perpetuates already existing inequities. So something as simple as text message notification will create a more equitable environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Jeremy Ogle.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeremy Ogle. I'm a resident of Lemon Grove, and I have two recommendations that I'd like to share today. First, I think the county needs to re-examine the clerk of the board website. It's very easy to find the agendas, but it's difficult to find any of the supporting materials that go along with the agendas. And I say that as someone who looks at the agendas regularly as part of my job. I do this for many cities and many special agencies, and I find the county system to be the most difficult to navigate. So first recommendation is to find a better system. Secondly, I wanted to speak as a specific example on the Working Families Ordinance. I've been working on the past several weeks on behalf of a coalition that is trying to get the word out about this ordinance, and it's been very challenging. Volunteers have been going door to door at the industrial businesses at Gillespie Field, and so many of the businesses are not aware of the ordinance or understand how it will impact them. I know county staff has done some webinars, but they're not reaching the right people. So I encourage you to take more time with ordinances like the Working Families Ordinances to make sure that they're reaching the people who are going to be directly affected. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next virtual speaker is Chris Dugan.
Good evening, Vice Chair Vargas and Supervisor Anderson. Chris Duggan on behalf of the California Restaurant Association, San Diego chapter. On behalf of the CRA, I want to thank both Supervisors Anderson and Vargas for bringing forward this very critical committee. Transparency between the government and its citizens should always be a top priority. One area that Vice Chair Vargas raised during her opening remarks, and we thank her, is that engaging residents and stakeholders early on in the development of public policy is vital to building public trust. And it is for that reason that CRA fully supports this committee and looks forward to working with the county government when we begin engaging on public policy matters near future. Thank you very much.
Now go back to hearing from 5. Go ahead.
Before you continue, I just want to make sure I clarify something. I know there's, so this is a different type of meeting, right, where we can actually have conversations on items. But I want to make sure it's very clear that masks are recommended indoors for everyone, but not required. And so I think to your comment regarding schools, school districts are following state recommendations. Happy to, encourage you to talk to your school boards directly on that item. And as for item 19, I did hear all of the 200 people that were here on that day, even though some people assumed that I wasn't here. I was here the whole time. I just want to make sure people know that I am responding to my district, District 1. We have about 95% of our folks vaccinated, and the request that I'm getting online and in the community is to ensure that we protect information, particularly to the communities that sometimes have been given misinformation. So I did want to share that information for you, since that question was directed directly at me. I think it's really important. All K-12 masks are required for everyone, regardless of vaccination status, per state guidelines. So that's not a county guideline. And I think that's something that I want to make sure that I shared with folks. So go ahead, Wendy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vargas. Now hear from 5 in-person speakers. So if I call your name, please line up by the murals. Mark Harrer, Mary Kay Powick, Carlos Reyes, John Folk, and Leon Benham. And again, if you'll state your name, please.
Sure. My name is Mark Harrer. I live in District 4. Nothing matters in terms of government policy, procedures, and administration if the people's vote has been compromised by negligence or malfeasance. Nothing is more important than the process, procedures, and accuracy associated with one's vote. This calls for full transparency of those processes and procedures. I believe the fundamental issue before this county is the security and accuracy of its voting systems. This calls for a full opening of the kimono. For example, the county registrar offers several ways to vote. One is by mail. But what happens when you receive ballots for your kids who haven't lived with you for years? 2, there is something called the remote accessible vote by mail for people with disabilities. How is the county ensuring that only those with certifiable disabilities are allowed to access and use this system? 3rd, we have voting machines. Which company manufactures and operates these machines? Can we see the contract with the machine company? Are there comprehensive post-election audits? As our public servants and elected
you.
officials with specific fiduciary responsibilities,
sir.
I know you'll find this a critical first step in full transparency. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Carlos Reyes, and I'm here to talk regarding the agenda item that was passed regarding the health misinformation, declaring it a health crisis. And I wanted to touch on the points that we were only given 3 days to act upon it instead of the required 30 days. And I want to touch on base regarding that. The agenda item the language is very vague and leaves open to interpretation that anything that does not conform to the propaganda or mainstream media narrative can be labeled as misinformation. So any doctor that comes out or any healthcare professional that comes out and says anything regarding this, whatever they say can be labeled as misinformation and they can lose their license for it. So with this, you guys have pretty much silenced all medical opposition. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Leon Benham and I live in District 1 and I'm represented by Nora Vargas. I've been intimately involved in the Tijuana River Valley, and not too many people realize that back in 2019, 2020, when the state proposition SB 507 was being developed, that there was meetings that were being held. And these meetings were with state officials and they were conducted by Surfrider and Wild Coast. Many of the public, including myself, were prohibited and turned away at the door. So SB 507, which contained 29 projects, was void of public comment. And that is the basis that the county supervisors use to plan the restoration of the Tijuana River Valley. And I appreciate Councilmember Nora Vargas for her task force and for opening up dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Particularly on this item, it's extremely important. And part of the reason why we created that task force, and I think Supervisor Anderson and I are very interested in making sure we hear feedback from the community. So if you have any other recommendations, please reach out to my district, because what we're going to do with the $300 million is really critical for the region in particular. And I think we have a window of time to make sure that that change happens very quickly. And we want to make sure it's very public as we prioritize we're moving forward. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is John Folk. I'm a 22-year Army veteran here in Chula Vista. I'm a member of your district, Ms. Vargas. Mr. Anderson, thank you for your vote, the 3-2 vote. It was a strong vote. Unfortunately, it didn't go the way we thought. But I'm going to go back to my 4 words that you'll always hear from me: duty, honor, country, and freedom. What's more important than the Constitution, the oath, is you vote with your conscience. And I unfortunately don't think that people listened completely last week to all 400 plus that we had on the TV and here in person. Vote with your conscience. That is the most important thing up there that we expect of our district representatives, our district people. Vote with your conscience. If we'd voted with our conscience, I believe it might have been a different vote other than 3-2. I hope there's an opportunity to go back to that topic somewhere down the road, because if you vote with your conscience, you will do the right thing.
Mary Kay Penick or Powick? I'll do a final call at the end for those that aren't coming to the podium. We'll now turn it over to 5 virtual speakers. Ellen Nash. Ellen, you should be able to unmute yourself. Ellen, we'll come back to you. Dan Pickford.
Thank you. On August 31st, Supervisors Fletcher, Vargas, Lawson, Remmer pass item 19 against medical information. In his remarks, Supervisor Fletcher provided one example was the misuse of veterinary grade intermectin, a view he's repeated multiple times on social media. The author of the original article, Rolling Stone, was required to retract this story because it was found to be completely false. What will be done to protect the public from Supervisor Fletcher's medical misinformation?
Next speaker, please. Gisela.
Do you hear me?
Thank you. You may proceed.
Yes. Do you hear me?
We can hear you. Yes, please proceed.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to let me speak. Thank you, Nora Vargas. I am your constituent. Thank you, Joel Anderson, for all your efforts that you have been doing. And I am very concerned. There are many things that I'm concerned. I am concerned about what passed Nathan Fletcher in regard of the misinformation. I'm very concerned because it's like a dictatorship. There are treatments that they are working and things that they are not letting to speak out. The other thing that is my concerning about the mask mandate in children, breathing dioxycarbon of their own breathing damage the brains of the children.
Thank you.
And also.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Next speaker is Molly. And just for the virtual participants, if you go ahead and raise your hand, then we will get to you if you would like to address the subcommittee. Molly, you may proceed.
Thank you. Good evening, Supervisors. Molly Kirkland with the Southern California Rental Housing Association. Thank you so much for having this meeting on transparency. I think goes without saying that's a very, very important component of government. When we're talking about transparency, I think one thing that is key, especially as policy proposals come forward more and more often, is time to fully digest those. Earlier this year, this industry had an ordinance come forward the week before Easter weekend. We had literally days over that weekend to digest everything. It would have been nice to have more time because, like many industries, ours is complicated. There's a litany of laws and you need to compare and get with attorneys to look at these things. So anything you can do to increase the time that the general public and stakeholders can review proposals and have more time for feedback would be greatly appreciated. And I echo what Mr. Ogle said about the website. Thank you.
Thank you. And next speaker, please. Leela.
Hi, about transparency. My name is Leela Harris from Poway, California. I'm a real estate professional. I'm a mom. I read contracts all the time. Yet when I'm reading what you are voting for, I can't understand it. It's full of legalese. I don't understand. I mean, even the real estate transactions, since last week, we had to listen to so many real estate transactions. I started reading them and I didn't know, I didn't even understand them. So simplifying the wording. And then also, if you want people to be involved, which I don't think you really do, but then it needs to be followed by your procedures and your, like, it's starting at 10 a.m. or it's starting at 2 p.m. We're going to listen to this item at a specific time so that we didn't have to stay there from 8 a.m. till, 14 hours later. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. And this is listed as BIA San Diego.
Hi, my name supervisors. Thank you for having this meeting. My name is Lori Filer, and just want to talk about an item of bringing items to the board. They may have been posted on Friday and you hear them on Tuesday, like the transformative housing policy. We'd like to know if you could provide that information 2 weeks that you're thinking about bringing something. We'd like to think that we could add and have some constructive thoughts on some of the policies that come forward and help to make them even better. So just getting a little bit more advance notice when ideas are coming forward. And then as you create policy, certainty is the most important so that people can understand exactly what's possible and what's not possible. Once again, supervisors, thank you for having this meeting.
Thank you. We'll now go back to 5 in-person speakers. For those that are joining virtually by phone, if you'd like to speak, you can press *9 and that will raise your hand in Zoom to indicate that you'd like to speak. And we'll go to 5 additional in-person speakers. When I call your name, please line up. Eugene Neal, Catherine Neubauer, Michelle Dyke, Mara Meza, and Caroline Grace. So I've called your name, please come forward. And again, please state your name for the audio record. You may come forward in any order.
My name is Eugene Neal, United States Marine Corps combat veteran. Our founding fathers understood the ugly side of human nature. They understood greed, thirst for power, deception are inherent. This is why they created the Constitution of the United States of America. This document is designed to acknowledge that the God-given rights that the government cannot take away and sought to empower the individual. I have watched this board vote through blatantly unconstitutional measures against the will of the people and hide them under the guise of things like public safety and equity. We don't have the faith in a government that subverts our elections and checks and balances. You've now imposed on our freedom of speech and have been chipping away at our Second Amendment rights to bear arms for years. You've destroyed sovereignty in our United States by your equitable actions at the border. What you're doing is transparent. You're intentionally eroding the foundations of this country was built upon. You roll out one initiative after another slowly so that we, like boiling frogs, not realizing what's happening, we're being boiled alive. People are waking up, and it's not going to be long before they turn on you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, please.
Hi, I'm Carolyn, and I have 3 quick points. What are the Board of Supervisors procedural rules and where can we find them? Please make them available to us. It seems like the rules are being made up as we go along and the Brown Act repeatedly violated. 2, if Tara Lawson-Remer chooses not to be present to vote, perhaps she should step down so that we can replace her with someone who will be. 3, in 2012, Obama passed the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act that legalized propaganda and misinformation. Being that you allege concern for misinformation, reversing Obama's 2012 Smith-Mundt Modernization Act should be a priority. Thank you.
Thank you for your feedback. I just want to let you know that the policies and procedures, we actually voted on them at the beginning of the year, right? We did some updates to some of them. And then you can find them on the website. If you need a copy, you can go to the clerk's office and they can also give you a hard copy if you need one. Okay? And on the other items, I've taken them down as well. So I appreciate your request.
Good afternoon to all. My name is Mar Mesa, and I'm a District 1 resident and advocate. And first and foremost, to previous comments, this is, you're not, with all due respect, you're not doing us a favor. We are entitled to this transparency, and we hope to have more. And also, I wanted to just voice my concerns in a nonpartisan way in regards to a lot of homeless encampments we have in District 1, a lot of garbage and trash everywhere, and we need employees to actually clean it up. And we know that the governor gave money to an abatement committee and to please hire employees, and also please please send out social workers to help the homeless in the encampments in Chula Vista, H Street. It's very life-threatening for them. And there's millions of dollars the government has given to help them and aid them. A lot of them are veterans and so forth. And Matthew Doherty suggested housing first model.
Thank you.
And also for the ones that don't want housing, we
Thank
can maybe give them a
Thank you, ma'am.
a vacant lot
Because
that the
it's
city
only-
owns.
because
Thank you.
Thank you. Because it's only 1 minute, feel free to reach out to my office directly and I can give you some answers, but just really quickly so that you know, over $10 million were, $15 million, I think it was, directly for the mobile units to be able to help our homeless population. Those are going to be kicked off in Chula Vista and National City. They are now already in process, should be finished within the next 6 months. And it's important to know that we are looking at the encampment. So that's really important. And then the other one is I am on the trash can abatement committee for Caltrans, where we're actually disseminating the dollars. So if you have specific areas that have not been looked at, please reach out to my office and we will make sure that we follow up. We're keeping a list and we're making sure that Caltrans is being held accountable to ensure that our communities are clean. So for all those things, you can also directly just contact me and I'm happy to follow up.
Call for Catherine Neubauer and Michelle Dyke. Again, we'll come back to the individuals that have called at the end if there's time. All right, we'll move on to 5 virtual participants. Lisa Spalding. Lisa, we see you unmuted yourself, but we're unable to hear you. We'll come back to you, Lisa. Thank you. This next individual is listed as Dee Breslin.
I'm the president of the Gillespie Pilots Association, which is in District 2, El Cajon, which is an economically disadvantaged area with a 9.5% unemployment rate.
Can you please state your name, sir?
Dennis Breslin.
Thank you so much.
President of the Gillespie Pilots Association. I'll also say District 1 is also an economically disadvantaged area, Supervisor Vargas. So you'd think jobs for women and people of color would be high on the priority list. But that ordinance does exactly the opposite of that. It's either drive people out of business or drives them off of county property. Taylor Guitars is a good example. They have 300 people and half of them are people of color. They're going to outsource their guitars to Tecate, Mexico if this ordinance passes. Amazon property, which brought 500 green high-paying jobs, evaporated when they were targeted by Nathan Fletcher for this ordinance. So the communication on the ordinance is really poor, or it's inaccurate. Hardly any of the people we talked to, over 200 of them, knew that they had to pay prevailing wage to all of their employees. And so Supervisor Vargas, I just asked you to reconsider your vote on this and let the market set the rates, not the state.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Diane M.
Hello, and thank you guys for holding this transparency meeting. My name is Diane McGowan. I'm here in East County. And first of all, I just wanted to say that regarding the policies and procedures, I'm new to being involved in your meetings and processes. So I was unaware that there are guidelines as to how you might call a certain item number. And I was one of those hundreds of people that were there at 7:45 in the morning. I didn't get a chance to speak until probably 9:30, 10 o'clock p.m., but it was well worth the 14-hour wait to have my 2 minutes. And maybe we can fine line and have some transparency, let the people know when you're going to be calling that into action. I had 2 other people come and carpool with me that day that couldn't wait. and had to Uber it back to East County because they wanted to speak and didn't have an opportunity to wait. The other thing is about this misinformation, public thing that passed, like who is holding the credentials? Who's holding the information and who's accountable? Where their credentials? Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. It's listed as Gil Ungab.
Oh, wow, that's me. I didn't realize this. Hi, guys. I'm Dr. Gil Anthony Ungab. I'm a cardiologist in the South Bay. I live in Nora Vargas' district. I'm part of the Filipino COVID-19 Task Force and now part of the new non-for-profit called Southern California Center for Inclusion and Diversity. We are a organization of multi-specialty physicians who live and practice in the South Bay, and many of my colleagues are right now working on the front line dealing with COVID-19. And they've been doing this since March 2020 with maybe a 3-week break in between, but our surge has been really intense in the South Bay. But the reason why I'm here at this meeting is about transparency, and I'm new to this process, but I know in July there was grant offerings or approvals for grants, but it's very hard for community organizations that are new to this to find deadlines and application processes. And I've called some of our representative offices and have had no return calls yet. So, but I think the thing is like, yeah, you guys have access to people who can help, but there's another group out there that wants to participate. How do we find out?
Thank you.
About the programs?
Thank you for your comment. And if you are interested in grants in any, there's 3 pots of money: the small businesses, the neighborhood rehabilitation, and then the county grants. What are they called? The community enhancement grants. And so my office particularly has a process, and you can go to my website, noravargas.com, and you can apply. And we are going to be reviewing grants in the next couple of weeks, and we'll be distributing first funding grants in October, but all of it is on my website and you can find it there. And I think other members of the board have the same information as well, but that can help you, particularly because you're District 1. I wanted to make sure I share that with you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Cindy.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, you may proceed.
Thank you so much. Transparency. You all talk about this a lot, but how about we actually see it? How about you post all of your political donors on your websites? How about you post who funds the studies you quote? I know they're funded by pharmaceutical companies. I know how to look this up. Most people do not. I call on you to share the studies and information from people you disagree with. That would be transparency. If the vaccine is so safe and effective, why all this coercion for a virus with a 99.97% survival rate? How about you start calling the manufacturers to be liable? That would be transparency. We see you. You have underestimated our resolve, and that is a big mistake. Thank you.
Next speaker, please, listed as Mike.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can. Please.
This is Mike Borello, Carlsbad, and I'm actually calling to talk about policy and procedure, and hopefully you can address this tonight and explain why agenda item 19 last Tuesday, if you pull that and you look at the top of the page, it's stamped by the clerk, and it's clearly August 27, 8:33 in the morning, 3 minutes after the deadline. And according to your policies and procedures, we had a colleague pull it. You actually violated the procedure by allowing it to be on the agenda and also voting on it. And I believe that procedure says it's null and void. So can you please explain that tonight, considering this is transparency and more dynamic than a regular board meeting? Please.
Just for the record, that board letter was docketed at 8:28 a.m. in the morning. It was docketed to my office by email when we printed it. The date stamp on the print was 8:33 as was docketed. So the timestamp is when my office receives that under the board's rules of procedure, which it was received timely via email. Thank you.
Yeah, we continue to follow procedure. One reminder, just for everybody who's virtually participating, I want to remind you that staff will be reviewing all comments in the Zoom chat after the workshop. So just make sure that you continue to add those, and we will make sure we capture them for the Board of Supervisors.
All right, we'll now hear from 5 in-person speakers. Bracio Sanabria, Ali Hartman, Cynthia De Maria, Renee Roberts, and Audra Morgan. Yes, we'd be happy to provide a copy of the email. You can come forward in any order.
Hi, Allie Hartman, Reopen San Diego. Okay, so we were told there was going to be 3 minutes. There's 1 minute, so I'm going to make this fast. First of all, why is the Board of Supervisors adopting resolutions that is the same thing that communist Cuba is doing? So, you know, in communist Cuba, they just said misinformation is against the law. Why are we doing that? Why'd you vote for that? Nora Vargas? Huh? How dare you? How dare you? The next thing is, I want to know about this COVID data. Who is the county COVID data officer? Who is certifying the data? Who has access to the data? Where is the database? How is the data analyzed and parsed? What is the process to gather this data? Where is the data sourced from? What is the system or program that is producing the data? Where can we address issues regarding our questions with the COVID data? If you are using this data to lock us down, you'd better give us the answers to those questions. Do you understand me? That's all I have to say.
Next speaker, please.
Anywho, hi there. Thank you guys for being here. Once again, you guys, this is getting kind of old. I'm sure you guys are tired. I'm sure you're tired of wearing masks all day at work, having to hear us repeat ourselves over and over and over again. So while I appreciate this, Cynthia De Maria, my name.
Thank you.
I appreciate the transparency meeting, but I mean, it's just, oh man, this is just, it's asinine. The whole thing's asinine. Again, you guys are elected officials and your job is to secure our rights and not dictate anything at all. So in a constitutional republic, that would equal true transparency, which would equal true freedom, okay? And we could not have been more transparent than we were by the hundreds on August 31st. That went unheard. So now we're even more pissed off. No one has the cap on any information or knowledge ever in the history, because no one's smarter than God, period. And no matter what your title is, you have no right to control our medical freedoms. And it is a fact that regarding medical misinformation, that science can be skewed and manipulated by man to push an agenda, which is what we unfortunately are witnessing today.
Thank you. Your time is up. Next speaker, please.
Thank you.
My name is Renee Roberts. Last week, over 12,000 comments opposed to Agenda 19. Under 300 comments were a yes. Over 200 people spoke in person, 0 stood here with a yes. 70 people called in, 64 opposed, 6 said yes. And now you want to talk about open and transparency a week after that? Transparency cannot be truly discussed until that week's meeting is addressed. Transparent people look at people who are talking to them. You all but Jim did everything but look and listen to your constituents. That shows us that you are anything but open and transparent.
Audra Morgan. So Supervisors Desmond and Anderson have been advised of the penalties and damages that have been accrued by violating 18 U.S. Code and 42 U.S. Code for the past 21 months, which are a violation of civil liberties statutes in San Diego County in pursuance of the Constitution and the laws of the United States. And these matters require immediate repudiation and vindication for the civil liberties of the San Diego County residents. The whole board exists in the state of citizens' arrest awaiting to be fully executed. The violations they have accrued have prison terms as penalties and/or death if there have been lives lost. Number one, you say that that agenda item was put on record on time. It was not. The stamp is the record, not the time that it was sent in email. That whole thing should be null and void. You should not be voting on something where you're breaking your own rules while expecting the San Diego County residents to follow your freaking rules.
Call for Bracio Sanabria. All right, we'll now hear from 5 virtual participants. Next speaker, Sandra.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, this is Sandra Martinez, and I want to thank you for having this as an open meeting. I did not know it was normally a closed one, so I'm very appreciative of this. I think everybody agrees transparency is a good thing, and we need much more of it. I'm going to address just number 19 from last meeting. There are a lot of other things I could get into, but I'm not going to. A lot of other agenda items that have been passed. But you know, we're talking about misinformation and you're talking about transparency. But the people that you're considering real information have been the least transparent of all. We have the NIH, which has lied up the wazoo about their funding and all sorts of things in the past, if you check their record. Moderna, Pfizer, the CDC, the FDA, the American Medical Association, the California Medical Association, the Board of Medicine, the Board of Pharmacy are all completely not transparent. How can we follow anything that's supposed to be transparent from all these organizations are anything but? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. This is a caller. The last 4 digits are 6598, and you'll need to press *6 to unmute your line. That's 6598.
Good evening. This is Anne Riddle, and I'm just calling in because of this opportunity you've presented to us regarding transparency to let you know that I participate in 3 county planning groups, and I'm kind of a conduit to parents regarding health issues that the Board of Supervisors are involved with. And I've been following COVID. And when I was listening to the Board of Supervisors meeting last January to get an update on COVID to share with them, I was surprised by the bringing forward of an ordinance that would bring marijuana businesses to our unincorporated area. I had never heard about such a proposal at any of the county planning group meetings that I attended. And as best as I could tell in talking to my other parents, no one had this situation of bringing forward ordinances or proposing ordinances without any information back to the people that's going to affect, the people in the county planning group. It's unfortunate.
Thank you. And next speaker, please. This is another call-in participant. Last 4 digits are 2153. And again, we need to press *6 to unmute your line. That's 2153.
Good evening. My name is Kelly McCormick, and I would just like to share, I'm a resident of the county, and I would like to share my concern about the marijuana ordinance that's being proposed for the county. It seems to be rushed, and I even read in the Reader that a company has been hired as a consultant on this, and many of the planning groups that I've heard speaking are not in favor of this. And it seems like the people are not really getting a voice in this issue. It is going head first, into the process before people have really had a chance to speak out on it. And I think that it's moving too fast without enough transparency. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Bridget Dolkas.
Hi, this is Bridget Dolkas, and I'd like to talk about transparency, trust, and recognizing the voice of the citizens in meaningful ways. The three dimensions of trust would be competency, honesty, and benevolence. And I don't think that a lot of the constituents actually feel that those three criteria are being met. I'd like to address that perhaps there's some books that could be read. I think there's a lot of books written on the subject about building trust in an organization, in a company, and certainly in a government that could be utilized as very helpful information in this regard. I also suggested at the last meeting a regular roundtable discussion with numerous experts chosen partially by the community to guarantee that fair representation of expertise is admitted to the conversation, and to develop a more immediate checks and balance system for the statistics that are presented, as well as which studies are cherry picked to present as facts.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Casey Lynch.
Thank you, supervisors. My name is Casey Lynch. I'm a resident of District 2. I'm also an elected member of the planning group here in Ramona, but today I'm speaking on my own personal thoughts and ideas. I'm not representing that group. I just want to say and speak out in support of the 3 bullet items that you are supposed to be looking at today, which is waiting 30 days to vote on board letters, holding board meetings in other areas besides downtown, and requiring input from county boards and commissions on policies. Those 3 items are focused on one thing, which is seeking consensus. As elected officials, our job is to hear the public and to find consensus on some of the issues that come before us. We can't do that without public input. And splitting votes on a 5-member county board of supervisors panel 3-2 all the time is just not going to work. And so I'm just asking that you, all of you, would consider finding and following the consensus model in these issues and taking your time. As an elected member, I did this. I had the courage to put off items, to table items when they were hot topics. So we got people's input. I just asked you to find a way to do the same thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Now go back to 5 in-person speakers. When I call your name, come forward. Rich Diascoli, Joanne Fields, Anna Haid Brock, Diane Ake, and Amy Reichert. And again, please state your name. Thank you.
Hi, Rich Dascoli. I'm with the Pacific Southwest Association of Realtors. We represent homeowners in San Diego County. We have 6 bullet items here that I won't go over. There's not enough time. But organizations like ours vet issues. We have, I've got 100 professionals on different committees who are willing to look at issues that have to do with land use and policy. And there are a lot of organizations like ours. We'd like to recommend more time, in order to look at policy changes and subcommittees, organizations the size of the county. If they're going to be making decisions at the board level, I think we need to have a subcommittee of supervisors to actually vet it. And I applaud you for having this meeting for that very reason. Thank you. And I'll leave these with the clerk.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
My name is Diane Ake. I thought we had 3 minutes, so I guess I have to talk really quick. I'm co-founder of Reopen San Diego. I wanted to find out why you violated the county rule 2 of the San Diego County Rules of Procedures for Meetings, which says if there's an item on the agenda which is reasonably expected to generate or involve considerable public participation, after consultation with and with the approval of the chairperson, the clerk shall set the time at which the item will be heard so as to minimize inconvenience to the participating public, such as setting the time at which the item will be heard at 10 a.m. or 2 p.m. And I guess, you were going to expect a lot of people for the number 19, so that should have been done. So I'd love to hear about that. I'd also love for you to move back the deadline for agenda items to at least 1 week in advance, so we have time to look at it instead of like, I don't know, I think it's Thursday or something like that. Wait 30 days to vote on board letters. We only had about 3 for that number 19. And please let us know the health is misinformation. Oh.
Good evening. My name is Joanne Fields, Government and Public Relations Director of the Asian Pacific Islander Initiative. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm in agreement with email retention so we can show how staff does not respond to emails. I like the portal so that we can see who received grants and procurement contracts, so we can see where the impact really is. Because in the API community, if you didn't know, the Census 2020 numbers came back and our community rose by 20%, but we are not served at the same number as our population, which is almost 500,000. So I'd like to see more transparency, more access to information instead of the regular folks that receive the larger grants, like Dr. Ungab, who is the co-founder with me for the Filipino COVID-19 task force. We have been impacted. We are your healthcare workers. We reside in South County, but also in Oceanside and Mara Mesa, where we did not receive the same support we'd like to see with other nonprofits and organizations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Anahid Braki. I'm a resident of Santee, Joel Anderson's district. Thank you so much, Supervisor Vargas and Supervisor Anderson, for hosting this meeting. I came to talk about something else, but decided based on the topic of the evening, I'll just say thank you so much for your courage in naming misinformation a public health crisis. This is open and transparent government. I don't think the County Board of Supervisors has ever listened to so many people before. You all were elected in you all started serving this year, and we're seeing so many incremental changes that make transparency and accessibility of these meetings better and better every month. So thank you for that. I'll just say I never thought I'd have so many things in common with so many people who are against vaccinations, but I am also pro-medical choice, pro-choice, and against Citizens United. Let's see who's funding all the research and all of these politicians. I totally agree.
Hi, my name is Amy Reichert. I'm with Reopen San Diego. And I guess we were supposed to have 3 minutes. We actually got an email from your office, Supervisor Anderson, that we would have 3 minutes. And instead we come out here only to find out that we have 1 minute. So I'm grateful that you're doing this tonight, but I want to say something to you, Supervisor Vargas, that I think a lot of people are wondering about. It does seem that the county is greatly influenced by big pharma money. It does not seem as if you're serving our interests. And so we would like some more transparency about the flow of money, because you know what? There's also a public health crisis over media misinformation. There's also a public health crisis over government misinformation. Why pick on the public unless you're trying to sell a product? And when there's a product that's not liable for its side effects, that's a problem. Thank you.
Andrew. The 1 minute was my idea. And the reason why is we had so many people respond, and we had, unlike a regular meeting where we'd go past midnight, we're not going past midnight today. But what I would say to you is you can email us, you can write us, we'll still take that information. So don't think because you had the 1 minute, but I didn't want somebody waiting here for an hour and a half and never get an opportunity to speak. So you could follow up and write us a note or an email and we will read it. So, but it was my idea, not Supervisor Vargas's, and that's only because I wanted everybody who took the time to be here to at least be heard from. Thank you.
We'll now hear from 5 additional virtual participants. Wayne Kotow.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can, please proceed.
Thank you. Hey, I would just like to say, I would like the website to show the voting records by supervisor, at least for each year. I think that'd be adding to the transparency. I'd like to see an audit schedule that we can review. I would like to see contracts be available for review and easier to find. Agenda item details are hard to find on the website. Voting election irregularities, I think, really need to become public. And I think discretionary spending by each supervisor needs to be put up on the website. And I think we need longer advance notice on agenda items. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Danae Ranucci.
Hello, my name is Danae Ranucci and I live in Alpine. I recently became involved with the Board of Supervisors because of the proposal of the Alpine Community Park that was brought into my neighborhood. I've actually spoken to all of the supervisors' staff regarding this issue. We had a lot of people come out during the budget hearings to speak and relay comments, and 63% of those who showed up were against the issue, but it was still pushed forward. And I think that while this is crumbs compared to the cakes that you all have on your plates, and I know that it's a small issue, I do think that it echoes a lot of what a lot of people are saying, which is that when people show up to these meetings and they say their piece, it really feels like we should be heard, and that's not what we're feeling. So I really would appreciate the supervisors acting on the public comments that are provided and otherwise showing data as to why the decision was made to go in the opposite direction. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate it.
Next speaker is Michael Borden.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please proceed.
Thank you, Supervisor Vargas and Supervisor Anderson for holding the meeting. My name is Michael Borden. I have a small business at Gillespie Field and have been here since 1987. At least 10 acres from the county under terms and conditions that do not include any restriction or direction on my employees' pay. Most of my employees are women and minorities. Many have been with me over 10 years, so I can assume that they're happy with the pay and benefits. If the county allowed SB 535 to pass, those employees could cost our company more than our total revenue that they produce. Now I'm speaking on behalf of GALA, Gillespie Airport Lease Association, with regard to SB 535, the Working Family Ordinance. I can promise you that if you allow this ordinance to pass, the destruction it will cause to this already economically depressed area, which will now not only extend to the mass loss of jobs for the very people it was supposed to help, but it will also cause insolvency of small businesses on leased land, eventually destroying county airport's ability to collect rents and fund airport projects and upkeep. It will also eliminate investment on county leased land, as we recently witnessed with Amazon pulling out a potential build site on the county land. Which we have.
Thank you. Your time is up. Thank you, sir. Move on to the next speaker. This is Carla Farley.
Good afternoon, Carla Farley, San Diego Association of Realtors. Transparency is fundamental to an effective government that is worthy of its constituents. We've witnessed important items being brought before the Board of Supervisors that were only noticed 2 business days prior. The issue came as a surprise to many of our stakeholder groups, but clearly not to others. This is not transparency. This is not inclusivity. This is a breach of trust, and we need to aspire to do better. Even the Board of Supervisors' own rules of procedures call for items to be filed a minimum of 8 days in advance. I am calling on the Board of Supervisors to make the following revisions: waiting the 30 days before taking a vote on board letters, holding some board meetings in other communities besides downtown. We need diversity and inclusivity. Require input from county boards and commissions on policies before they vote. We should not use COVID as an excuse to rush items through the process. After all, we shouldn't declare a misinformation crisis and be a contributing body to it. Hashtag eyes wide open.
Thank you. Next virtual participant, Ellen Nash.
Yes. Hello, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you. Please proceed.
Okay. Thank you for having this opportunity to speak and the importance of this theme in regards to transparency in county government. It's very important. I want to speak to the eradication of poverty in San Diego. As a lifetime resident, I've seen poverty in underserved communities where I've been born and raised, in Nathan Fletcher's district for all my life. And I would like to see the county take a more transparent approach to the eradication of poverty, particularly relating to data assessment, outcomes, and results. I represent the Black community, and yes, our numbers have been reduced. However, we are also those that are overrepresented in all of the areas in regards to poverty. So I would like to see a data assessment done to get a lay of the land on where we are. And I would like to see more results and outcomes that result in middle-class opportunities and lifestyles for Black people in San Diego. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear from additional in-person speakers. I'd like to invite forward Dia Khan or Decon, Jason Robo, Clifton Quinn, Carlos Meneses. You may come forward in any order. We'll ask you to please state your name.
I'm Deacon, host of the But I Digress streaming ministry, seen Thursdays at 8 a.m. Pacific time on patriotssoapbox.com. This next Thursday at 8 a.m., we will discuss matters of transparency in government, which depends on objective data. Calling attention for the board's reference and for the residents. There is a press release on standardnewswire.com dating from the 3rd of August, Monday in 2020, entitled U.S. National Empirical Survey Shows No Coronavirus Epidemic. And you'll see there that the CDC's numbers, the world numbers, and an empirical survey conducted from coast to coast in April and May of the past year in 2020 demonstrated a 0 incidence of a coronavirus deaths nationwide. Additionally, we'll talk on Thursday about 18 USC and 42 USC. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Clifton Quinn. I'm in Joel Anderson's district, and that completely changed the direction of what I was going to talk about. I want to repeat one of the same questions, but I would love an answer that several people have asked tonight. Like, I don't see a pandemic. There was a line to get into Petco Park, 40,000 people tonight. Come on. And we've all done lots of research. Most people are not anti-vax at all. They say, if you want a vax, get a vax. That's just absolutely fine, but don't force it on me. So we've all been lied to by the federal government. We've been lied to by big pharmacy. It's not the most trustworthy organization. So we're just saying, you know, if you don't see a huge pandemic, why is there such a panic to get everybody vaccinated? But my real question is, if somebody is going to be labeled as the official source of information, medical information, who is that? Is it the FDA, CDC? You know, a lot of people just aren't trusting what's coming from there right now. So can you answer a question? Who is going to be labeled the official source of information? I'm about the fourth one to ask that, but we haven't heard an answer.
Next speaker, please.
I'm Carlos Meneses. I'm an investigator. Do not continue using the same controllers, data manipulators. Academia, Johns Hopkins Research, Imperial College have a consensus with the community to have other qualified ones. Your boss makes you sign non-disclosure agreements. How can we have a transparency? And otherwise, if you don't sing the song, you get caught on your funding for your career campaigns. And also, I face-to-face, I confronted Nathan Fletcher in 2019. I told him with evidence and documented information, your climate change planes spraying us chemicals are the real cause of respiratory illnesses and the fires in California and everywhere. Dr. Andrew Kaufman now has the evidence that the fake pandemia, the virus that you so-called COVID-19 has never been separated nor purified in lab, differentiating your own human toxins and your own exosomes when you're sick or the immune system. The fake pandemic, you follow orders from Big Pharma World Organization, told you that any flu symptoms since 2019, since the pandemic, the lockdowns, denial of treatments, make them, and CPR waivers, kill everybody.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, please.
My name is Jason Robo. I'm an ACE personal trainer. I've also got nutrition and other wellness backgrounds. I'm curious if talking about 80% of people who died of COVID were vitamin D deficient. Is that misinformation? Is having heightened cortisol lowering your immune strength? Is that misinformation? Is 1/6 people dying of heart disease? Is that misinformation? Is the inactivity pandemic? Is that misinformation? Is the fact that we have an obesity epidemic that's like the Rodney Dangerfield of epidemics that gets no respect? Is that misinformation? It is sad. That's called the standard American diet. And is that misinformation? Bill Bryson wrote about the 1918 event that the mask did little or nothing. You're going to start burning his books now. Is that misinformation? Apparently, we got the transparency is limited by 1/3 of public comment. We can't even see your faces. Apparently, you have the listening skills of Helen Keller. And I'm going to make fun of you at the American Comedy Club. And if 5 people show up, then I get a guaranteed spot tonight at 7:30. And I hope to see you there.
We'll now hear from 5 virtual participants. Lisa Spalding. Lisa, we see you've unmuted, but we cannot hear you. Your device may be muted. Lisa, we'll come back to you. Next speaker is listed as S in Zoom. If you can please unmute the participant with indicating as S. You should receive a notification to unmute yourself. If not, we'll come back to you. Next speaker is Melody Savage.
Good evening, and thank you, Board of Supervisors, for this opportunity. My name is Melody Savage. I'm a realtor for the state of California. I reside in District 2. I agree with the transparency for waiting 30 days to vote on board letters after they've been put on the agenda, holding some board meetings in other communities besides downtown, requiring input from county boards and commissioners on policies before the Board of Supervisors can vote on them. I and people would ask that you would rescind your vote from last week on item number 19, and that you would hear the people when they speak, and that you would not place your views upon the people by voting what you think is accurate and should be for the people. We are there to have you represent us, but yet it seems like you're there for your own agenda and pushing your words forward instead of what the people have spoken. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Tanya. Tanya, you may proceed. You'll need to unmute your device.
Hey, can you hear me?
We can, thank you. Proceed.
Okay, so this is Tanya. I'm in Desmond, District 5, I believe. I never speak, and it wasn't until recently I started even paying attention to what's going on in San Diego County since I just moved back into it. Thankfully, I spent most of the pandemic in Orange County, where it's a little bit more sane. And thank God for people like Rooted Wings who keep me informed of what you guys are up to. I'm agreeing with the woman who spoke on transparency of donors and what you've got yourself invested in as a public figure that's been elected. I'm also agreeing with the woman who asked that times be set to be discussed so you're not wasting time on purpose of your constituents who want to participate instead of spending all night waiting to be spoken or to be able to speak. I think we can all agree that transparency in our government is a must, should always exist, and most of the time doesn't. On that note, the transparency should be stated for each item voted on by the supervisors, as well as much about how much items are going to cost. And for example, why did Vargas and Reamer, who chose to vote yes last week for item 19, when it was obvious the way the people they represent felt?
Thank you.
I also want to be transparent, say that I'm watching now and I'm paying attention.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Next speaker is Ingrid.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can. Please proceed.
Thank you so much. I'm Ingrid and I live in El Cajon, California, and I agree with everybody about transparency. Also, I agree with the gentleman that says all the studies about the fake COVID hoax pandemic that we are in. And I really, really want to get the mask off my children when they go to school. It's just horrific. A solution for that is to buy restaurant tables so we can exchange them. So when they sit in their classroom, they can take their mask off, because enough is enough and I don't like it. Thank you.
Next virtual participant is Britt Mayer.
Can you hear me?
We can. Yes, please proceed.
Hi, I mean, how untransparent can we be when all constituents say on item 19, you have a vast majority saying that no, and then you have three out of 5 vote yes. And that is going to crumble trust, and it's going to force us to think there's something else at play. Additionally, we demand transparent reporting from Dr. Wooten on the percentage of COVID patients seeking hospitalization for COVID-like illness versus other medical reasons, and then testing positive for COVID upon hospitalization. What are the standards of testing patients in hospitals? Is it universal, or does testing depend on if a patient has been vaccinated or is unvaccinated? What is the adverse reaction data in San Diego County? And what is the current data on our county's mental health with overdoses, suicides, the effect of this on children? If you want us to trust you, you're going to have to start to be completely transparent, or we are forced to think something else is at play.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Noemi Abrego Wood.
Hello. So I'm a citizen, a U.S. citizen. So this is my First Amendment right to speak to you guys. And I would urge the public to actually get counsel if you do feel like you've been wronged by the government, and because there is suits coming forth as we speak. And también para de tratar de asustar a mi gente. Es mi gente, we're from San Diego and we do not appreciate how you've been. I'm from District 1 right here. I just moved here in March and my doctor had actually told me that I would get sick. I did work for a district last year and we did have plexiglass all over, and I'm sick of how tired of how you guys are such hypocrites. I mean, coming from the top, Nora, you know that Pelosi probably told you that you guys had a party and all the people were like looking like slaves at her party. And you don't think we see that? Like I said, I'm just done with the nonsense.
Thank you. Now go back to the in-person speakers. I'd like to invite forward Melissa Grace. And the speaker slip just says me, Keepers of Nuremberg Code. If that's you, please come forward, and then I'll recall individuals that I previously called. So if your name is called, please come forward. Mary Kay Powick, Catherine Neubauer, Michelle Dyke, and Rocio Sanabria.
Good to go. Good. Melissa Grace, District 4. Hi, Joel, Nora. I was sitting at home watching the transparency meeting, and I thought I should come down here and voice my opinion face to face, because I actually heard you guys talking back to some of us. And we want transparency too. What I'm curious about is I heard you say, Nora, that 95% of your constituents were fully vaccinated. I want to know, what's that? One vaccination at least. Okay, so in process of being vaccinated. So what I want to know is, did they receive full informed consent for their decisions? Did they receive the inserts? Did they receive the positives, negatives, the risks associated? And for the board in general,
the majority of the people that show up are in opposition of the continued illegal lockdowns under 10.10.80. The soonest, you have to end the local health emergency at the soonest possible date, which is today. So where's the statistics that show that that's not the majority? You work for us, so how do I find that information?
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
I think they only said they're going to listen to us, just like the last time. So I'm here as a member of the Keepers of the Nuremberg Code. I didn't put my name down because no one is required to do that in order to appear at these public meetings. Andrew Potter is shaking his head because he knows. The gentleman here, when he saw I didn't put my name down, asked me to put my name down. Ladies and gentlemen in the audience, stop giving these people your names and your addresses, because when they finally finalize taking over our country, they will come looking for you. I am not kidding you. So do not voluntarily give these people your names and addresses now to come to these public meetings where you are going on record you don't believe what's going on. You are the enemy. That's why they're trying to control the First Amendment. So I brought a couple of things. My friends told me to get up here and talk to them, but I'm not talking to them. I'm talking to the people in the audience. I brought a couple of things. I brought a handout to give to anybody you know in the military who's being illegally told they have to be vaccinated. The people who are, the officers are resigning. The enlisted people can't resign, so they're being forced to stick around. Get these to give to your friends, and I brought another copy of this stuff for people at work.
Thank you.
With a cover sheet that wasn't on it before, and I'll have them at the back of the room. Please come and get some for your friends.
Thank you.
So we have, it's 6:28, but we have 7 people still that want to speak. So we're going to go ahead and let them. And then once they're finished, we're going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting. And any other final comments that Supervisor Anderson had.
Okay, we'll hear from the remaining virtual participants. Lisa Spalding.
Yes, do you hear me?
You can, thank you.
You can? Okay, great. Well, I have 1 minute. Okay. With all due respect, there is no transparency or informed consent with the unconstitutional COVID mandates, from masking or suffocating our children, our future, to the tyrannical COVID non-vaccine passport, which violates all 10 codes of the Nuremberg trials. It's time for we, your bosses, to get equal time in the form of a forum or a panel to present information, which is even from the CDC's and VAERS own documentation, that has now been deemed misinformation if it's repeated, out there in, social media. And we are now living in 1984 doublethink, a dystopian nightmare. I wonder if Ms. Vargas or Mr. Anderson can sleep at night knowing what's happening to this county, this state, and this country. Thank you.
Next speaker, please. Next speaker is C. Valens.
Hello, could you hear me?
We can.
Could you hear me?
Please state your name.
My name is Delos. All right, I just want to let you guys know, you guys just all need to wake up. How long has this planet been around? Could you hear me? Could you hear me? Could you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
How long has this planet been around? And how long have we been around? Not that long, right? And why is there so many different types of vaccine? This is the ultimate human experiment. The difference is that our parents didn't have no information, so they were like the polio. We have more information now. Why are you taking it away from us? Like, our parents did not want to be ignorant, but they had to be ignorant. So this is the ultimate human experiment. You guys need to stop. now. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Allison Minio. Allison Minu. If you can please unmute. We'll come back to you. Next is Laura Smith.
Hello, thank you for taking my call. I'm in Joel Anderson's district. And you talk about transparency, and over 400 people spoke at the last Board of Supervisor meeting against that stupid agenda that labels health misinformation as a health crisis. Everything that Mr. Fletcher and Ms. Wooten said is misinformation, is propaganda and rhetoric that filters down from Fauci, the NIH, and the CCP. I'm not a scientist or a doctor, but I can read and I can do my own research and come up with my own conclusion. I don't listen to the mainstream media because it doesn't report news anymore. They deliver the propaganda and the socialists, globalists, all that media that possibly George Soros is in control of. Anyway, unfortunately, those that risk everything to spread the truth get censored, vilified, threatened, fact-checked, and even called conspiracy theories. It's ridiculous that the real experts are being ignored just like us. We the people aren't being heard. All of you have an agenda, and it's really, really, it's upsetting that you play on your phones, don't look at us, and you're rude.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Allison Manu. I just saw you unmuted. You could try that again, please. We'll come back to you. Next is Michelle Sherry Porter. If you could please unmute. For all the virtual participants, you should see a notification on your screen to unmute yourself once we've allowed you to speak. Move on to the next participant. And this is a caller. Last four digits are 1822. You'll need to press *6 to unmute your line. 1822. Again, you'll need to press *6 to unmute your line. That's 1822. *6 to unmute. *9 is for raising hand. *6. All right, we'll come back to you. We'll try one more time for Allison Manu. Vice Chair Vargas and Supervisor Anderson, we're not seeing any activity from the remaining individuals that requested to speak virtually.
Thank you. Before I do my closing remarks and close the meeting, Supervisor Anderson, any comments?
Yes, first of all, thank you for co-hosting this with me. We heard a lot from folks. I see that 82 people have signed into the chat room and have added stuff. I don't know how many emails we received, but I think we have a lot of great information to work off of from tonight. Second, I want to thank all the staff that's here. I'd read out all your names, but I think you'd prefer to be home with your families, so I'm not going to do that. But thank you so much for staying late and making sure that this was a great meeting. And I want to thank the public for participating. You know, I know many of you drove from a long distance, and whether you called in or came here and spoke, I hope this is just the beginning of having a greater dialogue. Thank you very much for being here.
And so let me go ahead and share information. So I want to first, let me thank everyone for joining us today, providing your ideas. Our commitment is to open and transparent government. In terms of next steps, if anybody has additional recommendations, including the folks who ended up not being able to call in, we are receiving any additional information up until Friday, September 13th, so that we can submit any comment. You can submit any comments. The email is oerj@sandiegocounty.ca.gov. And I also want to share that all the feedback that has been shared today, along with any additional comments received until September 13th, will be gathered and provided to the Board of Supervisors at a regular meeting. The feedback was going to be taken back to the committee. We're going to review it, and then Supervisor Anderson and I are going to work with county staff to report back to the Board of Supervisors all of the information that was received today. We really appreciate everything and all of the questions and information that people received today. A lot of the conversations, I think Andrew responded to the comments regarding item number 19, specifically to the time. If you want a copy of that, you can feel free to go ahead and check out information there. When it comes to any other questions that you have, some people asked me specific questions about my district and vaccinations. We are following all scientific protocols. You and I are going to disagree. We're going to agree to disagree on what you think and what I think. But I really appreciate that you were here, even if we're not agreeing on how we look at some of this information. But I appreciate you being here, and we thank you, and the meeting is adjourned. It is.
It's up
right
on the
there.
screen.
Thank you.
Friday is September 10th. It's the 10th, not the 13th.
It is Monday, the 13th. Thank you for your clarification. Thank you for that.
Yeah.